My name is Nora Whitfield, and the chapel smelled like wet wood and lilies when they closed the lid on my grandmother's casket. Candlelight trembled across the varnish, and my father leaned toward my grandfather, as if confession could be whispered through his teeth. "You should be lying there instead," he said, not loud but sharp enough to nick the air. Murmurs collapsed into silence. The organist froze with both hands lifted, waiting for a cue that never came. Grandpa Leonard smoothed the lapel of his old navy suit, the one that kept its shape no matter how many seasons tried to bend it. He looked at my father the way judges look at men who think the rules bend for grief. "No," he answered, soft and steady. "I have something else to do." Then he buttoned his coat and walked out into the rain. I wanted to follow him, but my father caught my sleeve and held on, not hard, just as if he could anchor me to the pew by sheer memory. "Don't," he said. "Let him run." The words rattled in my chest like coins dropped in a charity jar, loud, small, and not enough. Outside, the storm hissed against stained glass. Inside, relatives rehearsed their sympathy like old hymns. I stared at the door he had used, counting my breaths until the service ended and the pallbearers lifted what was left of our good name. By the time we reached the house for the wake, my father's phone was already buzzing. 1 call, 3, 9, then a flood. When he finally answered, his jaw clenched, and a voice I couldn't hear made his eyes shift from anger to something colder. He hung up slowly. "Your grandfather," he said. "He didn't leave to mourn. He prepared." The wake felt like a house breathing too quietly, as if grief had moved into every corner and didn't want to be disturbed. People spoke in soft tones, stirring sugar into coffee like it mattered, like sweetness could dilute the bitterness clinging to the walls. I moved between them on autopilot, accepting hugs, nodding at condolences. My mind replaying the moment Grandpa Leonard walked out into the storm. His absence was louder than all the voices combined. I escaped to the kitchen, needing air. That was when I saw at Grandma's old music box on the counter. Walnut wood tiny brass hinges, the one she wound every Sunday afternoon after church. The lid sat open like someone had been interrupted mid-memory. No music came out, just the faint metallic scent of something old, something sacred. Inside, wrapped in the velvet lining, rested a small brass key and an old black and white photograph. The key was cool in my fingers, heavier than it looked, the way truth always seems heavier when you first pick it up. The photograph showed Grandpa younger, standing outside the Redwood County Courthouse. His coat crisp, his chin lifted his presence, demanding respect even in faded monochrome. On the back, in careful cursive 5 words, "Truth only breathes in daylight." My throat tightened. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt inevitable, like a fuse had been lit years ago, and today was simply the day the flame arrived. My father appeared behind me, shoulders squared as if bracing against a blow. "Put that away." "What is it?" "Nothing we need to drag up." His voice sounded tired, not angry yet. "Just worn." I slipped the key into my pocket anyway. It was Grandma's. His eyes flicked to the photograph, then away too quickly. "Don't start digging, Nora. Your grandfather, he clings to old grudges. You don't know him like I do." "No," I thought. "And you don't know him like I do either. The man who read court opinions like bedtime stories. Who taught me that corruption isn't always a crime. Sometimes it's just a choice repeated too often." The next morning I drove to Redwood First Savings, rain streaking across the windshield. The lobby smelled like lemon polish and printer toner. When I showed the key to the teller, she swallowed, nodded, and disappeared into the vault area. She returned with a steel safe deposit box, setting it on a private desk. "Per the instructions, this must be opened by both of you," she whispered, glancing toward the door. My father arrived minutes later, out of breath. Coat-damp eyes darting like a man scanning for exits. Without a word, he slid a matching key into the lock beside mine. The lid lifted. A sealed envelope. A USB drive. A notarized document transferring initial assets to the Ruth Carter Foundation, and a folded note with my name. Nausea and clarity arrived at the same time. Grandpa didn't leave to escape grief. He left to expose something, or someone. My father's hand trembled as he snatched the USB. "This ends now," he muttered. But I already knew nothing was ending. Something was beginning. Morning slid through the blinds in uneasy lines. Sunlight felt wrong after a day like yesterday. I sat at the table with the envelope, Grandpa's handwriting staring back like both invitation and warning. Dad was at the counter, jaw locked, clicking his laptop like he could will mercy onto the screen. When I unfolded the note, my breath caught. "At noon tomorrow, watch the news. Do not look away. Noon. Today." At 11:58, I was in the living room. Dad stood by the window expecting sirens. The TV flickered county launches investigation into redirected hospice funds tied to Redwood County Health Network. My heart froze. Internal evidence submitted by anonymous retired county official. Dad's knuckles whitened. "He set me up," he whispered. "He was the audit chief," I said. "Whose side are you on?" Then came the doorbell. A woman in a charcoal blazer. Ava Brooks. "Your grandfather asked me to come." She handed Dad a card, then looked at me. He prepared affidavits and letters of instruction. "You may want counsel." When she left, my phone buzzed. "Do not defend him. Truth needs you next." LW. I looked at my father, pacing, unraveling. He thought Grandpa walked into the rain to mourn. I was beginning to see he walked into it to fight. The house felt altered the next morning. Dad sat among crumpled notes, coffee cold. I opened Grandpa's letter. "I once protected your father out of love. It was cowardice. This time I will not fail you." Dad's voice was brittle. "You think I'm a villain? I kept this family alive." "And then you stopped," I said. "One transfer became 10. Stopping meant drowning. You chose the wrong people to save." A knock. Ava again. "Your grandfather filed everything, no room for doubt. The Ruth Carter Foundation will restore the funds. Nora, you'll oversee it." Dad's face fell. "He chose you. He chose the truth." As his face sank into his hands, I realized truth doesn't just break lies. It breaks the people who built their lives on them. The hospital call came after sunset. Grandpa's voice was faint but steady. He was broken before this. I just stopped gluing him together with lies. He handed me the cabin deed. Some things should be untouched by shame. Moments later, the monitors went still. Justice had claimed its cost. Rain tapped the hospital awning as I stepped outside. Tomorrow, Redwood County would answer the truth. Tonight, I learned what it cost to deliver it. The courthouse wasn't grand brick walls and glass that reflected whatever truth you carried in. Dad walked beside me, silent, his tie tightening like guilt. Inside, reporters scribbled. The prosecutor's voice cut clean. Hospice funds exist to give dignity to the dying. When they vanish, so does dignity. On the stand, I said Grandpa told me truth isn't betrayal. Pretending is. The judge's verdict, probation restitution, and community service at the Hospice Foundation. Outside, microphones waited. "He didn't tear us apart," I said. "He disinfected us." Dad whispered. "He won." "No," I said. "The truth did." Justice leaves the door open. Revenge slams it shut. A year is a strange thing. It sounds small when spoken, but living inside it feels like learning to breathe all over again. Seasons shifted across Redwood Harbor, and with them my understanding of what it meant to love people without lying for them. Some mornings, I still woke bracing for another headline, another rumor. But most mornings, I woke to something quieter. Purpose, maybe. Peace in fragile doses. The Ruth Carter Foundation occupied a renovated brick building near the harbor front. Ivy curled along the windows like memory trying to soften sharp edges. Inside, the walls were painted the same calm pine green my grandmother used in her living room, the scent of eucalyptus drifting gently from diffusers instead of hospital antiseptic. We didn't speak in whispers here. Dignity didn't require silence. I spent my days coordinating hospice support beds, funded nurses, placed family stipends arranged. There was a kindness in the paperwork now, a heartbeat beneath signatures and spreadsheets. I met families who had nothing left except the desire to say goodbye without fear of bills swallowing their grief. I saw gratitude in eyes too tired to hide their relief. Each thank you felt like a prayer answered a year too late for the woman who inspired it, and sometimes in the corner of my vision, I imagined my grandfather at the doorway, arms crossed, inspecting every ledger with quiet pride. He'd always said numbers told stories and stories told the truth. Dad fulfilled his community service hours slowly, showing up twice a week with the posture of a man walking through fog. He didn't speak much, didn't look at me long. Yet over time something changed. The stiffness in his shoulders softened. He stopped tugging at his collar like the world was choking him. One afternoon he even stayed after his shift to help wheel a patient's wife to her car. No cameras, no audience, just a small gesture, human and unadorned. I didn't forgive him that day. Forgiveness isn't an instant. It's a landscape you learn to walk without bleeding each time your foot touches the ground. But I saw a door crack open. Not wide, not eager, just enough for light to consider entering. When the anniversary of the foundation came, we held a small ceremony by the harbor. Families lit candles and nurses spoke about care as a form of love, not labor. Dr. Nguyen gave a speech about dignity at life's edge, his voice steady enough to hold the crowd in place. I stood behind the podium with the lake wind tangling my hair and tried not to cry when Maddie squeezed my shoulder. Later that night at my desk, I found an envelope with no return address. Inside was a note. I saw the ceremony on TV. "You looked like your grandmother. I'm proud of you." Signed only Dad. My breath broke in quiet relief. Not forgiveness, not a rewrite of the past, but a thread. Thin, delicate, human. On the weekend, I drove to the cabin Grandpa left me. The lake was still glass-edged with evening light, the kind of silence that invites confession rather than fear. His old rocking chair waited on the porch, paint-worn where his palms had rested for decades. I sat pulling my coat tight, watching the first stars struggle awake. "I think you were right," I whispered to the air. "Truth doesn't break families. It rebuilds the parts worth keeping." Wind moved through the pines, soft and steady, like a hand smoothing hair from my face. For a moment I imagined him there, a quiet presence at my side. When I closed my eyes, I didn't see a courtroom. I didn't see a casket. I saw a window, sunlight pushing through it, no longer afraid to enter. Sometimes the one who walks away from a funeral isn't escaping death. She's walking towards the light. Grief doesn't leave. It just learns where to rest. Some days mine curls beside the memory of my grandfather's steady voice, and other days it lingers in the quiet between my father and me, in that fragile space where love and hurt coexist, like two halves of truth that can't quite merge. But I've stopped trying to force one to silence the other. Justice is not a clean victory. It is stitching, not erasing. It sews wounds into something survivable and whispers that survival itself is an act of devotion to the people we lost along the way. There are mornings I still hear the rain against chapel windows and feel my father's grip on my sleeve, desperate to hold on to the world he built from fear and pride. And there are nights I sit on the porch of the cabin, listening to the lake breathe, believing with a clarity that doesn't shake anymore that we did what needed to be done. Truth didn't save us all. It simply gave us the chance to begin again, unhidden. And beginning again is its own kind of mercy.